Meantime, questions still lingering after the partial government shutdown froze those death benefits for families of fallen soldiers. And the pressure's on the White House to answer this question. Exactly when did the president learn what was going on? Here's Press Secretary Jay Carney just a short time ago.
My understanding of the judgment that since it did not explicitly call for or allow for this, that an alternative had to be found. And the president, when he learned that an alternative needed to be found, asked the chief of staff, his chief of staff, Dennis McDonough, to work with and speak to the Office of Management and Budget and with his lawyers to come to a resolution. And obviously you know now what it is, which is the Department of Defense is going to be able to time. Well, again, that's a legal opinion that I understand is not, was not the judgment at the time.
So let's bring in our political panel now. Bernard Whitman, former pollster for President Bill Clinton and Democratic strategist, and Brad Blakeman, former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. So, Brad, did the Fisher House basically bail out President Obama where he could vote present yet again on this situation?
No question about it. Fisher House is a fantastic organization that provides aid and comfort to those wounded warriors and those families who have lost our warriors. So they certainly stepped up to the plate quick and fast. The president shows incompetence. I'm not going to be a political person and say this was intentionally done. I don't believe it was. But I think it was negligent. I think it was incompetent. Government is supposed to prevent bad things from happening, not really respond to it when they do. This is an outrage to call upon a private organization for a government function. The president should have had it fixed. And quite frankly, we're not going to get to the bottom of this. We haven't gotten to the bottom of Benghazi. We're not going to get to the bottom of this. The most open and transparent government that was promised was never delivered.
So, Bernard, why wouldn't the president have issued an executive order on this the minute that he found out about it? So then he leaves it up to the House to pass it. This afternoon, the Senate passed it, but Harry Reid said it was all just for show and went on to say the entire shutdown is for show. And then Jay Carney, the spokesperson for the president, says even if that bill comes to his table, he's not going to sign it because Fisher House bailed him out.
This is so incredibly outrageous to suggest that this is somehow the president's fault. Then we have to ask, why did this happen and how did we get here? We got here because the House Republicans decided to fall on their sword and shut down the government because they didn't get their way on defunding Obamacare. That is precisely what's happening. And this horrible story, and I'm delighted that Fisher House stepped in, and I really praise them, but it shows the incredible unintended harm that can be caused when the House Republicans recklessly decided to shut down the government because they didn't get their way. It's the same thing that happened last week when the Capitol Police were working without pay to protect the citizens of the nation's capital during that attack outside the House office building. This is what happens when we govern by crisis and we are not responsible. When you talk about, Brad, incompetent and negligent, that's exactly how I describe the House in shutting down the government.
Well, Brad, what would have happened? Brad, what would have happened had Fisher House not stepped in? What decision would the President of the United States have made in this case?
The president would have had been forced either to sign or veto a bill that gives our fallen warriors the kind of benefit that was expected and that they deserved. Look, Bernard, we live in divided government. You know that. Do you think that the president can rest on the laurels of non-leadership by alleging that a super minority within the Republican Party, if you believe it, could shut down the entire government? Is that what you're saying? The president lacks the type of leadership to bring the parties together to form the kind of consensus that's necessary? How do you negotiate against yourself when the president himself says, I'm not negotiating? Come on.
Unfortunately, the Speaker of the House is not a partner in this negotiation process because he can't negotiate on behalf of his conference. If
he just did, though, Bernard. He just did. He's going there in an hour and a half.
So here, I want to praise this sort of initial short-term deal. I would be all in favor of a clean debt limit. And why not say, you know what, we're going to raise the debt ceiling for 6 weeks. We're going to have a clean CR for 6 weeks. We're going to keep the government open. We're going to make sure we don't default. And during those 6 weeks, we're going to have hard negotiations. That's the approach should be taken. We should raise both the debt limit and get the government
there's no credibility with this president.
Guys, I gotta stop it right here, but I want you to stick around because we're going to have another issue with you right when we come back.